The Maryland housing market numbers for the first few weeks of 2025 are now live on Redfin, and I'm going to cover what we're seeing, and it is not what I expected. So I'm going to dive into those numbers so you can get a feel for what's happening in the market, but I'm also going to cover what I'm seeing personally in the market here in Maryland and what you might want to do about it if you're a buyer or seller right now. So let's hop over to my computer where I can dive into the details and show you what's really happening. And again, this data is surprising. All right, so this is Redfin's market data site. This is such a great resource if you're trying to figure out what's happening in the markets. You can do all kinds of different things here. We're going to cover a bunch of the categories, but you can go by region. And in Maryland, we go by the DC metro region as our main indicator. It closely tracks the Maryland markets that we're talking about, but you can also go by county. So there are so many options here to really narrow it down. And there's other areas where you can go into city on their site as well. But for this particular area, just such a great resource. Now, one thing I like to do when comparing markets or comparing this year to last year is getting rid of the prior year's data before that, like 2022 and 2023. And the reason is it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on without removing those. And we'll bring them in a minute, but the green line is 2025 and the yellow line is 2024. And the first thing we're going to talk about here is the new listings. We are up 3.1% year over year for the same period of new listings. So there are more listings this year than last, but I would say 3.1% is pretty nominal. I mean, it'll bounce between 3% and negative. So I wouldn't say this is a huge increase. Now, one way to kind of measure the pulse of the market and see how hot it is right now is the pending sales. And what we're seeing is that we're down in pending sales 14.2%. This is a big deal, and this is what's so surprising to me. When I say this year is starting off way different than what I expected, the reason is normally during an election year, which was last year, people freeze. People generally don't like to make a move during the election time. Like a lot of people that reached out to me said they wanted to wait until after the election before they make a move. And normally the January following would be where everyone starts to light back up and go into the market and finally make a move. We're not seeing that. We're not seeing it. I'm very surprised. You'd think with how down the volume was last year that we would have had to go above the prior year. It's just not the case. That was down 10% of pending sales last year in January, and we're down another 14.2%. So it's just showing that buyer sentiment is not very high. Consumer confidence, it's just not high. People are not excited to get in the market, and way less people are entering the market than what I expected. And another way to measure kind of how hot the market is right now in Maryland is how many homes go off market in 2 weeks. And this is another category I was expecting to completely beat last year, and we're down 6.4%. That means that we have only 34.8% of the houses that hit the market during this time period went off the market in 2 weeks, like under contract. Where last year, about 41% were off the market in two weeks. So we have a colder market right now. And maybe it's because it was actually colder. I mean, we had single digit days here in Maryland, which is not common. You know, we're used to those 40-degree winter days. We had single digits. So that could be something to do with it. It's still pretty odd to me. Now, something that is kind of sticking with the trend, in my opinion, is that people are wanting to list their house for more. We are seeing a slight deviation here off of that seasonal trend, but 4.4% increase median listing price year over year. That's not anything too crazy in my opinion. And that's because the Maryland market generally appreciates about 5% year over year. And we do see that when we go to the actual median sales price, you know, the closed price, not the listing price, and we're up 5%. We're right on track. Okay. So this is typical for a Maryland market. And if we bring in those past years, we're going to see this trend. You know, this is what it looks like. And another thing to note here about price is, and where the news really gets you with those catchy headlines is for this time period here, where the median list price and median sales price increase, they're going to say the market's going up. And then once we hit July 4th, oh, the market is crashing and the housing prices are going down. But you really have to focus on year over year data because this is seasonal, right? So of course you're going to have ups and downs, similar to the stock market, but much more predictable. So we should predict that we're going to trend above, as long as nothing crazy happens, trend above 2024 and follow back down after 4th of July and have a little spike in fall, but then around the holidays, have it drop off again. That's probably what we're going to see here, as long as no major things happen in the world or the country during that time, which they could. So The next category I want to go into is the active listings. And this is interesting to me. So even though active listings, let's get rid of 2022, 2023. Active listings here are up 6.2% year over year. Let's look at this real quick. New listings. Okay, so new listings, this is what I want to cover. New listings are only up 3%, right? But active listings are up 6%. So what does that mean? That means that housing inventory is, in theory, increasing. So it's something to consider that the inventory is increasing. Now, with that, you have to keep in mind that it takes about 6 months of inventory to make a buyer's market, or 6 months of supply, I should say. And let's check what our months of supply are right now. We're pretty steady. We're at 13 weeks, so just over, well, geez, what is that? 3 months, just over 3 months of supply here in Maryland. We're not in a buyer's market just yet. That would be closer to that 6 month mark, but it is probably more. Let's check 2022 and 2023. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So we're really, really different than 2022. We're way up in weeks of supply. We didn't even have 2 full months then, and now we're really up here, trending along that 3 months of supply. Anything could change that to make it a larger supply. I mean, if interest rates drop and people want to list their homes, you could see a spike. You'd also anticipate buyers coming into the market then, but it's very interesting. We are increasing, so just something to consider there. But here's something that I think is a really big indicator of how home prices and like affordability is trending. That's the median sales price per square foot. This is where I see the biggest problem here. So median sales price is up 5%, but median price per square foot on sold properties is up 7.36%. Now, this is a more accurate measure of how affordable homes are, and they're just at their worst affordability. So it is something to consider if you're joining the market right now. 7.3%, 7.36% up year over year for the median sales price per square foot. This is how you determine, like, am I paying a lot more for a house this year versus last? And you are. And just even compared to previous years, it has just continued to go up in this region. So something to consider. That is way higher than I was expecting. Another surprising stat for me when I dove into this data right before this. So will it continue? We'll see. I mean, you can see there's also seasonal trends to this, just like median sales price. So you would expect it would continue upward until, 4th of July, end of June. And then it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, in my mind, how much more can you go, or how much higher can you go before people say enough, right? And I think we're right there. We got to be close. And you got to consider too, people are considering maybe leaving the federal government. Maryland has a lot of federal government jobs. Like, what happens if we lose a lot of those high earners in Maryland? We could see some big changes here. So this is a really important metric to cover. All right, so if you're a buyer or seller, what do you do with all of this information? Well, I would say if you're a buyer right now, you're probably right to not be excited about getting into the market, but I just don't see any reason that it's not going to continue an upward trend for these median sales prices. So my whole philosophy in real estate, and you can disagree with me, but my whole philosophy has always been the longer you're in the market, the better. I think time in the market beats timing the market and trying to wait for interest rates. And I've done videos in the past about all the different predictions of the mortgage interest rates, and they've been so wrong. Only a couple times were they even close. So I wouldn't rely on interest rates going down right now. I wouldn't rely on them dropping below 7. And if that's the case, are you going to stay out of the market forever? Or are you just going to jump in and make sure you're building that equity over time? Don't focus on the short term, focus on the long term. And as far as the Maryland market goes itself, I'm seeing some very interesting things that kind of correlate with the data. And one of those is that listings are sitting longer on the market, longer than those 2 weeks. People are listing their houses for a lot more. And I'm seeing that because of that, my buyers are able to get better terms and better prices on these properties. What I tell them and what you should consider is any house that's on the market for more than 14 days is really where you can start to get a better deal. And a better deal might not always be price. It might just be better terms. It might be that you can have a better closing date that fits your needs, or have more inspections that are more detailed where you really know that you're getting a great investment. Where if we get into a really hot seller's market again, that's where people start foregoing those inspections against their better judgment, buying houses that they don't know anything about the condition of. And I'm so glad we're out of that now. That was just such not a great place to be for buyers or sellers. Just it's a legal it's a legal issue for sellers. They just open themselves up to lawsuits, and for buyers, you could buy a terrible home that you have no idea about. So I'm glad we're out of that. But now I'm seeing that buyers can actually ask for those inspections again. They can have better terms, especially on those homes that are on the market more than 14 days. Now, what about my sellers? Well, my sellers, it's very interesting right now. I'm seeing more than ever my sellers want to price their homes higher, which is, I just wasn't expecting that as well. And I get it. You want the most money possible for your home. But what I'm finding is the best performing properties in Maryland, regardless of area too, are those that price just under market value. I've said this so many times. So test this out if you're in a different market. Make sure you really study it. But in Maryland specifically, if you price your home just under market, you get those buyers excited again. And that's what you have to do right now if you're in the market. So if you are somewhere else, California or Arizona or New York, and your home is sitting, it's probably because of the price, okay? So you got to get people excited to go shop in that 7% range, and that's one way to do that. So this is just a quick snapshot of what's happening in the market for these first few weeks of January. I'll give more market updates very soon. I'm so interested to see how February shapes up, because generally in February around Valentine's Day, we see another huge spike in buyer activity out in the market. So I'll make sure to come back and tell you whether or not that happens and what's happening around this whole big change in the federal government. Are people going to leave and take that 8 months of pay or not? That's going to change the Maryland market significantly if it does. So I will cover that in detail when it happens. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you stay up to date on all of my videos about moving to Maryland.